Very warm welcome to everybody from Tallinn. I'm Ivo. I'm an architect working for the Tallinn Spatial Planning Department. And our presentation is reimagining Soviet-era housing districts again. Because as long as I've been an architect, this conversation has been going on in Estonia for more than 20, well, pretty much from the point that the construction stopped. The conversation about how are we going to improve the public space, what are we going to do with it, has been ongoing so far with not so many results. Hoping it all to change today. So this is just our team. We're like an in-house architecture planning office for Tallinn. We're 12 architects and urban planners. So about background. So a little over a third of Estonians live in Soviet-era panel housing. When we come to Tallinn, it's nearly half of the people. We've got three main big districts. Can I? No, I can't. Lasnamäe, Mustamäe, and Aitsam. The problems that we have in those areas, this is a map showing the average income by district. Lighter blues are lower income, darker blues are higher income. So we have high concentration of lower income people living in those panel housing districts. We have segregation, ethnic segregation, more of immigrants living in panel housing districts and lower income people. It leads to gradual decline of the physical condition of buildings. It leads to decline of the public space. It leads to decline of the areas in general. Further issue is that, as you can see, there's a lot of land that is unused. It's not used as a green area. It's not used as parks, and it's used as sort of a, what's a good word? Eva, help me out.
It's not really used.
It's not really used.
Okay. So we thought how we would approach this presentation would be to almost like speak about a checklist, but almost as an anti-checklist and a very sort of a self-critical reflection of what's been going on in Estonia. You might recognize some of those instances from your country as well. So, I mean, scenario one, I'm an urban designer, master planner. I mean, do nothing scenario is maybe not the best option, but this is probably the most sort of prevalent one that's been happening in Estonia, and meaning that you can really go crazy on the inside of your flat. I mean, do anything from, you know, create your own kingdom. And there are some really fabulous examples around. Level 2 would be going sort of slow and steady, and then asking the question whether that's actually going to win the race, whether it's just slapping some color or paint on it, or we're going to slap a new facade on it. But I mean, this probably is not going to do it as well. So the point being that renovation, energy efficiency is not really going to do the sort of the overarching renewal of the environment that we're really looking for. So the key word is holistic contemporarization. Scenario 3, fast and furious. I mean, fortunately, this is something that's not been happening in Estonia, because there's something called privatization that happened in the 1990s, which has sort of avoided this sort of catastrophe from happening. But there's been loads of other cases from the UK, Scotland, Ireland, where this has been going on, and people have been sort of displaced in quite a horrific way. So blank page, again, out of the question. One thing that has been happening in Estonia is sort of a scenario that we call same but different. And I probably won't have to tell you what's different or what's not different about that page, but some sort of red flags that we might encounter with this scenario are, what are we talking about in terms of the sort of the building quality? Are we talking about sort of in 10, 15 years, we're going to have to almost start the cycle again of that renovation? This is something that's been happening in London, for example. again, when we're talking about sort of holistic renewal of the environment, the renders and the real life situations are very, very different. And this is something that we need to look very critically at as well. And this is another example of maybe focusing on one singular thing as opposed to looking at the complexity of the problem. So
that brings us to the iceberg, which we have renovation at the top and the energy efficiency when we look at those micro-districts. But the hidden part of the iceberg is the overall livability of those housing units, some being very small, not meeting the modern standards and requirements and needs of people who live there, the lack of public space around them or the poor quality of public space, connectivity, having mixed-use spaces, community, etc., etc. And I see that in Tallinn, we've been hitting this iceberg, we've been renovating those buildings, but in Estonian we call it making the building fat, meaning that you add the layer of insulation, paint some new windows, you make the walls thick without really improving the environment, without really improving the micro-district, but getting your heating bills a little smaller. So from here on, we have the question, so what do we do if we have all those problems? So we're going to give 3 perspectives that have been happening or are going to happen in Tallinn. Go wild. So pretty much paper can carry anything. In Tallinn, we have Tallinn Architecture Biennale, which happens every 2 years. And the theme of Biennale, or the vision competition last time, was to reimagine Lasnamäe micro-district with coming up with social credit systems, coming up with densification, coming up with gardening, growing food in those lands. All sorts of wild ideas. And all sorts of wild ideas have been going on for years, which have not led to anything yet.
But in terms of what the city is doing, one of the sort of the more the newer projects that the city is looking at is, when I talked about there's been sort of like not a very holistic look at what's been going on in those areas, is what we're trying to do is almost create a link between different areas of those sort of housing estates and different sort of districts in the city. And this is a sort of a concept for a new sort of linear park that traces a limestone outcrop throughout the city, which is almost 9 kilometers long. And what's happening is you can see the sort of the Soviet era housing estates on the bottom of the image, and on the top there are quite sort of fancy residential units next to the sea. So the idea is really to stitch together the neighborhood as well. And this is one of the sort of the more holistic approaches that we're sort of taking as a city.
And to finish off, in Tallinn we're starting a project, Soft Academy. This is the 3rd, Go Wild, this time for real. The idea of this project is we have a complex, not the entire micro-district, but 4 buildings in Lasnamäe, where we're trying to renovate those buildings in a holistic manner that would look into the public space around it and would improve the general livability of the neighborhood. And on that positive note, I think it's good to end our presentation. Thank you very much.